And hello, welcome. It is CAD Academy episode number 64. Welcome to another show, another CAD Academy, another week on this wonderful planet, enjoying this wonderful start to a new year. Hello, Adam from Florida. Greetings from South Florida. Good to see you, man. Hope you're well. Welcome to everybody else who's coming into this live stream, this live event that we're enjoying together, this communing, this coming together of people virtually over the interweb. Welcome. And if you are watching the replay, then welcome to you as well. Welcome especially to you. Thank you ever so much for watching. I hope this is going to be a fun-packed and value-packed show, a value-packed episode for you today. So what I was hoping to do today is to do a bit of a dating game Q&A, because the last few episodes, to be honest, I've had a lot of guests on and it's been me rabbiting on about a load of stuff, and the guests also banging on about a load of stuff. And I thought today it would be good to turn the attention back onto you guys, back onto your dating issues, your dating challenges, your dating dilemmas, your game issues, game dilemmas, etc., and basically anything else that's going on, really, because we are living through, of course, unprecedented times, crazy times the like of which we've never seen before. So any questions you've got, any comments you've got, any issues, challenges, etc. that you've got, no matter how big, no matter how small, whack them in the chat and we will deal with them in this show, because this is the purpose of this show. This is what CAD Live is here for. This is the whole purpose of this. This is what it's here for. It's here to help you get through the challenges, the vicissitudes of the modern dating marketplace, as cruel and as controversial and as convoluted as it can be. We're here to help and to give you that support that you need. So congratulations to everybody for tuning in. Thank you to everyone for tuning in, rather, I should say. Ubik, hello. Good to see you, man. Suleiman, Troy in Lockdown Central, hello. Yes, good to see you. Adam says, enjoyed the Rule Zero last Saturday, enjoyed the costume. So the funny thing about that was I'd actually been thinking about getting a costume. I'd actually been thinking about getting a, what do they call that guy? The QAnon shaman guy. I've been thinking about actually getting a QAnon shaman outfit, because I think, like all of us, I was glued, I suppose, to the television, watching those scenes that we saw last week in Washington. But to add an extra level of interest, I suppose, to the whole thing was the fact that that dude was wearing that crazy outfit with the, I don't even know what you call it really, but that hat with the two furry things hanging down and the big horns. I've actually got a hat like that. It's in Berlin, I think, at the moment, but I do have a sort of Russian hunting hat or whatever those things are like that. So if only I had that here in London, I could have used that and I could have just bought a couple of horns. But I was thinking, wouldn't it be great to go and send off for an outfit, maybe go onto Amazon, go to a fancy dress store online, get that outfit and appear on Rule Zero wearing that outfit. And to be honest, I thought about it too late and we hadn't agreed the direction for the show, so I wasn't able to do it. But luckily, the other guys got in there on my behalf and were able to do it for me. So we had Jack Napier wearing that lovely QAnon shaman outfit, that hat with the things hanging down. And we had, of course, Paul from Apex Mindset as well, who dressed like a Viking for the occasion. So we had our own mini celebration here on this channel on Rule Zero. And if you didn't see that show, then I would advise you to watch it. I'd recommend that you watch it. It was a really interesting show. I mean, I wanted to be honest, to steer the conversation a bit away from the political events, because as much as it's interesting to talk about that stuff, really that's the whole purpose of this channel, is to talk about dating and social interaction and charisma and so on and so forth. So I was very keen really to move it away from just the politics and to talk about frame. But inevitably, we kind of ended up talking a lot about the politics, although not exclusively. But nevertheless, it was an interesting show. So if you haven't seen it, it was the last upload on this channel. Take the time out to watch it, because it was an interesting show. And we had a load of people coming through. Rollo wasn't there this week, but Rich Cooper was. Aaron Clary popped in. We had Myron Gaines. We had Paul from Apex Mindset, Jack Napier, John MLD, Ryan Stone, of course. So there's a whole bunch of people on there. It was a really interesting show. Great to host. But we are back to the solo show today, and we are talking about dating Q&A. And 1231999 or whatever says Tony the Goat. I think he means Troy the Goat. Greatest of all time. Thank you very much. I take the compliment. The name is Troy, but thank you ever so much anyway. I appreciate you from the bottom of my heart. Adam says, apparently we need to act like we've got the virus in the UK, so now we're being told how to act. Well, indeed. I don't want to get too into that on this show, but yes, and unfortunately, or however you want to look at it, it could be that there are further restrictions coming in, but let's wait and see. On that, Silver Bishop, hello Silver Bishop, good to see you. Says, hey guys. Suleiman says, is Chris Ritty black pilled? Maybe, yeah. I suppose you could say that. I suppose you could argue that. But yes, what a character, what a figurehead for the whole thing. So anyway, listen. As is traditional on these shows, I have got a reading, or I've got something that I found on Reddit that I thought I would read out because I thought it was quite interesting, and hopefully this can spark off a bit of discussion. But in the meantime, and I see there's a couple of questions already, but questions, comments, issues around game, dating, relationships, because remember, this whole thing is causing a strain on relationships as well. If you're in a long-term relationship, you're with a girlfriend or a wife or, well, God forbid, or whatever else, then you might be suffering the ill effects of this as well. So, or maybe you've got a harem. Maybe you've got a massive harem and you're having trouble. How do you incorporate that with the lockdown rules? Okay, like how do you keep those plates spinning? So maybe that's an issue. So whack it in the chat and we will deal with it as we go through. But as I say, to kick off, let's have a look at this. So I saw this posted on Reddit, and it's called, the heading is "Stop Talking So Goddamn Much." Brackets, you don't have to. It's like one of those old records, isn't it? One of those old singles you used to go on the top of the pops when you have the title and then you'd have the end of the title in brackets. Stop talking so goddamn much. You don't have to in brackets. Stop talking so goddamn much. You don't have to. And this is what he has to say. The poster. This is what he has to say. I accepted the red pill early on. I was 17 actually. However, for a good amount of my life, I was awkward, weak-bodied, weak-minded, and struggled to talk to people. And even after I joined the military and gained 20 pounds, I still had lingering issues with interacting. I wasn't good at reading social cues. How many of us can say that? Or asking the right questions or building verbal rapport with people. When I finally did begin learning how to do those things, my way of interacting, although it worked, was still a bit too sterile. All right, this is actually quite a consistent problem that many of us have. My way of interacting was too sterile, too formal. You see, my issue lay in the fact that if I didn't know someone very well, things like charm and wit just wouldn't show. I tried faking them and it would only make things worse. Okay, well, that's interesting, isn't it? Fake it to make it. Sometimes it can backfire on you. Sometimes it doesn't really work. He continues. So when I heard there were all kinds of ways that conversation could lead to intimacy, I didn't really like it. I didn't like the idea of doing the one thing I didn't like, talking to get the girl. But I tried nevertheless. I tried spicing things up, in inverted commas, and introducing a little danger into my interactions with women. It's kind of stuff I talk about, to be honest. But I was stiff. I don't think he doesn't mean stiff like that. It means I was stiff and ill at ease. He means awkward. And even though it worked more often than it didn't, I felt like an actor putting on an act. It took a lot of work to talk a girl into intimacy. So he doesn't like conversation. He doesn't like and he doesn't like the sort of dark triad, spice it up type thing. Fair enough. I went through a pretty long dry spell. 9 months of training in the military and very strict rules about fraternization. The usual shit. Sorry, censors. I mean the usual stuff. And I proceeded to fall out of practice when it came to running game, or at least that's what I thought. I felt that I was generally out of touch with a side of me that could completely charm a room. But this was just the first step to completely purging myself of PUA BS. Okay, we've got a hater here. We've got a hater. He's calling PUA BS. I don't even recognize the term PUA, but you know what he's saying. He's saying that game advice is BS. Okay. So what happens? After training, I met a girl, and I was verging on MGTOW by this time. That is to say, going his own way and not really interacting with girls. So I wasn't particularly looking, but she caught my attention. She was petite, fit, brunette, piercing grey blue eyes, high energy, upbeat. I liked her vibe, as people say. I didn't really realize at the moment, but even though we hardly even talked, and when we did, it was pretty much about nothing, she was becoming increasingly more comfortable with increasingly more physical contact. Interesting. See, I decided not to say much and maybe even to be a little aloof, but at the same time, I wasn't trying to suppress my attraction for her. Okay. When we finally hung out one-on-one, it was she who'd invited me. Took me off guard for a moment until I realized I'd been withholding just enough for her to want more. Ooh. My physical actions, the way I behaved, regardless of what words came out of my mouth, were completely congruent with my attraction to this girl. And that was the most important game discovery that I've made to date. I might have said, I think the temperature dropped a little, but what I felt was, I want to F you, I want to have sex with you, and I'm okay with that. All right, so this is an interesting point. Okay, he says he might have just been talking about, like, I think the temperature's dropped a little. He might have just been talking about the weather, but underneath it, what he was feeling was, I want to sleep with you, okay? And that was being projected, okay? He says, probably for the first time, I let that masculine energy just sort of bleed out of me. And it proved effective in a most unintentional way. Since then, I've been operating this very same way with girls that catch my eyes. I'm not a talker. I'm not some improv guy or stand-up comedian. I'm too stoic and a little too quiet and traditional to be the dancing monkey, and that's just fine. I've cultivated this strategy, shaped it, built on it. These days, I tend to be kind of insider, so to speak. What I mean by that is, in situations where guys are clamoring for girls' attention, telling jokes and being loud and entertaining, I'm the one already taking her hand, dancing with her, kissing her. And while she laughs and humors the guys entertaining her, who are the dancing monkeys, they wonder why they're still so far away and I'm so close. It's because they were too busy trying to talk her into bed to act. The more frequent your small escalations, the more comfortable she will be with the large ones. So start small, but start early. I think he's talking about physical touch there. He's basically, I think he's saying, physical touch early, and then that can build up over time. But what he's saying is take action as opposed to talking the talk. It's not about verbally bamboozling her into attraction. It's actually about sort of taking action. And most importantly, allowing that desire to emanate from you, right? It's not about sort of like verbalizing it. It's about allowing it to just communicate. I think through eye contact as well. I think eye contact is really important in this regard. We'll talk more about this in a second when we finish the reading. But he says this, I'm writing this mostly to say that if you're like me, and I guarantee a lot of you are, you don't have to change. Find your mode of operation. There's not one right way to do things, only one foundational principle that women will remain governed by the evolutionary tendencies coded into their DNA to aid their survival in a pre-industrial world. It's a bit of a mouthful. There are more ways to be attractive than to be a social butterfly. That's only one of the many archetypes available to channel. This goes to prove that there's always more to learn. I could have sworn that in my early 20s, I was so much more experienced than when I was 17. But I still have more room to grow, a lot more. I've discovered my own avatar, the one that suits me, not someone I have to give myself a headache trying to be. Find your avatar. Okay. So, interesting comment, interesting stuff. What do you think about that? Anyone got any comments on that? Any thoughts on that? What I just read? Stick them in the chat if you have. I mean, there's a few things that spring to mind from this. He's obviously against the idea of that you have to be this kind of what he calls a dancing monkey. But he's fundamentally what he's really against here, I think, is what you might call verbal game. He's against this idea, or he's saying that you don't have to be this guy that is a great talker. You don't need to do any of that. And actually, as he titles the post, stop talking so goddamn much. You don't have to. So you don't have to be somebody who's great at talking. And actually, what he's saying is, well, there's a few things. The first thing he's saying, and I agree with this, is that what you say is not as important as what you convey when you say it. Okay, so he's saying that he could be talking about the weather. He could be talking about, oh, the temperature's dropped a bit. But through his masculine energy, as he doesn't term it, but is sort of shorthand for expressing what he's trying to say, through that masculine energy, he is able to communicate nonetheless the fact that he is attracted to her and he is imagining himself being intimate with her. Okay. And that is true. I agree with that. That's really, really important. And it's really powerful. Right. But like with everything, I mean, subcommunication, as I always say, subcommunication is so much more important than what you're saying on the surface, what you're overtly saying. And he's absolutely right in the notion that really what's more important than what you're saying on the surface is what you are communicating via other means, okay? And that can be by a combination of things. It's a very subtle, nuanced combination of things that includes touch, that is to say light touch, not creepy touch, guys. I'm not talking about anything weird, but, you know, like little touches, maybe like a little, not there, little touch on the arm, little touch on the shoulder, whatever, when you're making a point. Eye contact, really, really important. You can say so much more with eye contact than you can with what's coming out of your mouth, because you know, you're not going to verbalize your desire, likely, in the early stages of the interaction. I mean, you might, but it's not always the best way to go. So your eye contact, really, really important in terms of communicating what you want to get across. Your proximity, really, really important as well. You know, are you sitting awkwardly across a table from her and it's all very formal and it feels a bit interview-like, or are you sitting close to her? Is that proximity doing some of the work for you? Okay, very important. And he also describes what he's thinking in his head and how that communicates itself to her almost by osmosis. Okay, so regardless of whatever mundanity that you're talking about, are you in the mindset? Are you thinking internally, this is what the actual deal is? And is that being communicated? Is that seeping out of you? He describes it as bleeding out of him, which is perhaps not quite the best visual analogy for it, but you know what he's saying. And all of that stuff, 100%, I'm bang on with all of that stuff, okay? Because, and this is the thing, and all of that applies even if you are somebody who's quite good verbally, even if you are quite a good talker, and you quite like talking and you quite like having a bit of banter with the girls and all that kind of stuff, you know, a bit of banter when you're out and about in the club, back when we used to be able to do that. Nevertheless, it doesn't really matter that much what you're saying. I mean, it matters a bit, but it doesn't matter that much, because what's really being communicated is under the surface. It's under the radar, okay? And it's that sub-communication that's the important bit. So he's 100% bang on with this. And I've told a story before. I remember one time that I used to go into this coffee shop near to the place where I worked, and there were a whole bunch of baristas who were working there behind the counter, and we all used to queue up, and then you would get to the front of the queue, and somebody would serve you the coffee, whatever. And it was obviously a lot of people around. There was a lot of baristas working. So it's kind of a fairly pressured sort of social situation. And I remember one time there was this one particular girl that caught my eye that I liked, and I got served by her a number of times, and I'd sort of slightly engineer it. So maybe I'd get into her queue and she'd smile at me and everything else. And we would only have the most mundane conversations. They weren't even conversations, because I was buying a coffee and she was serving me. So that was kind of all there was. And I was slightly, you know, I mean, I've done some pretty outlandish kind of pickup things before, where you ask out the girl in front of the whole place and fine, whatever. And, you know, I could do that stuff if I have to, but, you know, like everybody, you've got that social situation. You don't want to necessarily be uncalibrated. You don't want to embarrass her. It's kind of a bit embarrassing for you as well. So, you know, you can rely on subcommunication. And so what I would do was, I saw this girl over a period of time. I was going into the coffee shop, buying the coffee. I would subcommunicate through eye contact, largely. You know, she knew that there was something up. She understood that there was a vibe going on between us. It was, you know, pretty clear through what was being subcommunicated, not what was being verbalized. Okay. And then in the end, I just said to, after about 3 or 4 times, I just said to her, you know what, it's kind of rude that we keep meeting up like this, and I haven't even taken you out for a drink properly yet. So, you know, how about you write your number down on the receipt, and then you know, let's take it from there. So, and I actually did the sign of like, write your number down. She understood what was going on. She brought my coffee back. She wrote the number down. And then after that, it was fine, because then I was messaging her separately, and we didn't have to then talk in that pressured social environment. But that interaction and the success of that interaction came about entirely through subcommunication, because the actual talking that we were doing was all about, do you want chocolate sprinkling with that? Do you want it extra hot? Do you want oat milk? Or, you know, whatever it was. It was the boring minutiae of buying a coffee. Everything was done on subcommunication, so incredibly important. But what he seems to be getting nearer to in this post, which I am somewhat cautious about, is the 60 years of challenge space. So if you look up 60 years of challenge, he was a dating and game writer who's written a number of PDFs. I think you can get most of them for free online. So Google 60 years of challenge. Yeah, interesting writer, interesting theories about different things, including, actually, there's a great PDF called Relationship Roulette, where he talks about the pitfalls of getting in of long-term relationships, and, you know, some things you may not have considered about that. So that's a really good one that Tom Torero actually always recommends to me. But he's also got another one of his PDFs. I forget the name of it, but he talks about proximity, okay? And he talks about masculine energy, right? And what he basically says is, and I wonder if this guy who wrote this has read it, because he uses similar language. He says, you need to do less. Okay, this is what 60 Years of Challenge says. He says you need to do less. You think you need to do more, but actually you need to do less. And what he means is that as a guy who's going out and socializing and chatting to these different women and so on, you think, I'm not doing enough. I need to do something to impress her, right? I need to find a new line. I need to think of something clever to say. I need to have some good jokes, or say something funny, or say something that's going to impress her in some way. And what 60 Years of Challenge says, and what I think this dude here is saying, is no. You don't need to do that. You don't need to do more. Actually, what you need to do is less. Actually, what you need to do is pull back and allow subcommunication to do the work. Okay? And it's a very seductive idea. It's a very seductive theory. And I recall some years ago reading 60 Years of Challenge on this, and it sounded great. I was like, yeah, this makes a lot of sense. This is fantastic. Because what he was basically saying was, he talked about going on for a drink with a girl, or going on a date with the woman, and you don't really have to say very much, okay? Because your proximity to her, she's going to feel that energy from you. She's going to feel the desire that you have. And that in itself is enough. And he, I think, harks back to primordial times and says, before language was invented, how do you think human beings got together, right? Attraction is something that happens regardless of language. Language is nice. Language assists in the process, but language itself is not essential in terms of attraction and in terms of people coming together. So therefore, don't feel that you need to do as much. Don't feel that you need to say as much. You can just sit there and smolder, and she's going to feel that. And I recall one time going on a date with this girl in Berlin, actually, and it was a Russian girl I met in Berlin, and we went for a coffee, and I just read this PDF. I'd read the ideas. I thought, well, this sounds amazing. This sounds fantastic. All you need to do is kind of sit there and smolder, and she's going to feel that vibe. She's going to feel that energy, and she's just going to fall into your arms because that's natural. That's just what men and women do, right? And I recall, I've told this story before, but I recall sitting there on the date, and we bought our coffees and we sat down, and then I'm just sitting there like this, and I'm kind of like allowing her to feel that vibe. I'm trying to allow her to feel this energy. And of course, as you perhaps can imagine, it started to get pretty damn awkward because she's sitting there and she's like, yeah, yeah, I don't quite, I'm not, what are you saying? What are you doing? And I'm just sitting there like, emanating, just allowing that vibe, allowing that energy to come off me. And she actually said, in the end, you're just sitting there. You're just sitting there trying to act really sexy, aren't you? And she said, but you're not saying anything. I haven't got anything to go on. And needless to say, that interaction, that date ended, and it didn't go anywhere, and that interaction totally failed. Okay, so I'd taken on the spirit of what 60 Years of Challenge had said, but I'd taken it too literally, and I'd taken it too far. Okay, because you just can't. It's just not really. I'm not saying it would never work. I mean, obviously there are exceptions to the rule. It may depend to some extent on her level of attraction to you and all of these different things. But by and large, it's unrealistic to have a normal human interaction with somebody where you're not saying anything. It just doesn't really work. Okay, and I also think it's a mistake. I've also sort of come full circle with this now, and I do think it's a mistake to think that verbal dexterity or the ability to talk is not an attractive thing. I think that's absurd. And actually, when you look at, if you read earlier texts, if you read things like Shakespeare, if you read things like Dangerous Liaisons, which became the film Cruel Intentions, things like this, actually, and you read about Casanova and these people, actually, verbal dexterity, the ability to basically bullshit, the ability to BS, is a highly prized tool, is a highly prized skill set, let's say, that really helps in terms of dating, that really helps in terms of getting together, right? And often the guy who's got that $1 million mouthpiece, the guy who's a bit of a motor mouth, who could just sit there and talk and keep talking and sort of beguile the people that he's interacting with, beguile the women that he's interacting with, that guy very often turns out to be the guy who is successful, rather than the guy who's trying to be the strong, silent James Bond type who just sits there and doesn't say anything. Okay, so that was my experience with the 60 Years of Challenge model, and as I say, it didn't really work. It kind of messed it up. But I think now, in hindsight, like with anything, there needs to be balance. Okay, so that you need to be able to talk. You need to be able to hold a conversation. You need to be able to do some storytelling. Okay, I was just on a private webinar with my Patreon guys, and by the way, if you want some private webinars with me twice a month during the month on different aspects of game and dating, much more unrestrained environment than YouTube, go on my Patreon. The link is below. But I was just talking to the Patreon guys about this, and we were talking about storytelling in terms of dating. And you've got to be able to talk, right? You've got to be able to fill those awkward silences. You've got to be able to, because your ability to manage the conversation, your ability to keep the social interaction afloat, that in itself demonstrates social acuity. Okay, and if you're able to do that, that gives a very positive impression of you. Okay, of course, if you're Justin Bieber or somebody, then you can probably afford to sit there and say nothing and, you know, whatever. But given that most of us aren't that, unless Justin's watching, and welcome to the show if you are, Justin, given that most of us aren't in that position, then being able to hold forth, being able to talk and being able to be amusing and engaging and emote and all of these things, that is a very attractive thing in your arsenal. But you can combine that with some of what 60 Years of Challenge is talking about and some of what this dude is talking about, in the sense that I can be talking about absolute nonsense, okay? And I'm holding her attention. I'm talking nonsense and I'm keeping the thing going, but I'm also sub-communicating. But I'm also using elements of touch and proximity and eye contact. At the same time, I'm also perhaps imagining some future intimacy that may occur while I'm also keeping the conversation going and I'm talking and I'm storytelling and all of these things at the same time. So why not use the fullest extent of tools in your kit bag rather than just use one of them? I mean, yes, proximity works. Yes, touch works. Yes, eye contact works. Yes, all of those things are great. Yes, your masculine essence. Yes, that works. But why not also couple that with an ability to command the situation socially, i.e. to talk? Why not talk as well? That also works. So why not put the two things together and create a supercharged ability, if you like? That's what I would say anyway. I think it's very risky to be somebody who just relies on sub-communication on its own. Now, this guy in the Reddit post, all he cites is one example where he got with this girl, and he says he didn't say very much, and she kind of liked his vibe, and they got together. He cites one example. Now, I suppose the implication is this has worked for him more than once, but who knows? He's only citing one example at the moment. So, like, I am skeptical that it is a great long-term idea. I get where he's coming from. And by the way, I also as well, I should say, when he says, listen, I'm just not that kind of dude. I'm just not that dude with the gift of the gab. And so therefore that's not me. And so I'm doing something else. I'm fine with that. I'm fine with that. People have different strengths. That's correct. And listen, you might not be that sort of person who you know, you might not be comfortable with talking for long periods of time and stuff like that. Well, okay, fine. Then find your strengths and play to those strengths. Everyone should play to their strengths. But all I'm saying is, if you go to a busy, crowded bar and you've got groups of people, well, remember back in the day when this used to be a thing, you know, you'd have groups of people standing around and they're chatting and everything else. You're going to be much better placed if you're the guy who can infiltrate the group and start a conversation and keep everybody wrapped with it and focused on what you're saying. That puts you in a much better position than if you're the dude who's standing at the back, holding his drink, emanating masculine energy, right? Unfortunately, in many cases, the dude who's standing there emanating that masculine energy is just going to get ignored and he's going to go home on his own. And the cocky loudmouth dude who could talk about a load of nonsense for 3 hours, maybe because he's done some naughty substances or maybe because he just practiced this stuff, that guy is going to get the attention because it's, you know, we live in an attention deficit economy, right? And if you're somebody who can go out and, you know, present and hold people's attention and say funny things, you're going to get more attention. That's just how it is. That's just how it works. Okay. So I would say, yes, project. Yes, have that masculine energy. Yes, think about that kind of intimacy that you would like to achieve and allow that to be communicated through your gaze, through your eye contact, 100%, do all of those things, but also practice the verbal dexterity as well, because it's just gonna stand you in good stead, guys. It really, really is, 100%. Particularly in those social situations, if we ever get them again. but you know what I mean. Particularly when you're out and about and you're dealing with, particularly with groups and things like that. You know, put it this way. I'm not saying that his method doesn't work for him. I'm sure it does. I'm sure that he has success with what he's describing. But unless you also at least make a bit of an effort to get good with the conversational side of things, then you're kind of going to be leaving money on the table, because what he's describing is going to work in certain situations, and it's particularly going to work with women who are perhaps somewhat attracted to you anyway. But it's not going to help you when, you know, you go into the lounge bar and, like I say, everyone's sitting around chatting and blah, blah, blah. You know, like it's not going to help you unless you luck out and there's a woman there who's particularly attracted to you for whatever reason. But that, you know, the whole purpose of studying social dynamics, the whole purpose of studying this stuff is so that you can go out and create opportunities for yourself. And just emanating desire is not really going to do that for you, in my experience, at least. That's what I think. Anyway, whack your comments into the chat. Maybe you disagree, maybe you agree, whatever. Let me know. But that's what I think. I think you need to, you know, have that kind of gift of the gab a little bit, or at least practice it. At least try and make it better. You know, not everyone's going to have it. That's fine. But just practice it. Just try to get better. Silver Bishop says, I agree with you, Troy. There needs to be balance, and many people talk too much and try these ways to qualify to the girl. That's true as well. Johnny says, Tom Torero said he spent a year in Russia creating a video, harem video, how he created and maintained it, but I've not heard about it being released. Has he mentioned it to you? He has, and he did say the camera's a bit blurry. Okay, sorry about that. I don't know why that is. I think there's a little lag. I think there's a little bit lagging today with the internet. So apologies for that. I'll try and get it sorted out. But yeah, Tom Torero did spend about 10 months in Russia. Not last year. I think it was the year before, 2018. And he created he got loads of video footage from these different girls that he was, you know, spending time with and everything else. Now, he did do a live event in London. He did a live event in London. I guess it was last year. I guess it was before the pandemic all kicked off. It was a while ago anyway. He did a live event. He had a few people there, about 20 people there, I think. Actually, no, it was in 2020. He did it because, so I guess he did the project in 2019, and then he showed this thing in 2020. Now, I didn't even go. I mean, I'd met up with him and stuff when he was here, but I didn't actually go to the event because I remember, because of restrictions, because of the pandemic, he was only allowed to get a certain number of people in there, and it was all quite strict and everything. So I didn't actually go to it, but he did do a live event where he showed the footage. And I think either he's going to do, well, I don't know what his plans are, but maybe he will release it as a video or something like that. I don't know what his plans are with it, or do it as a seminar or something like that. But I think it was something that he didn't end up putting out as a product yet, but he did do that one live presentation of it. So I don't know. Watch this space and we'll find out. Adam says, the person that needs the other person less had the most power. True. Rob says Dancing Monkey Game is best. Well, look, Dancing Monkey Game gets a lot of stick, all right? Because guys are like, oh God, I don't want to be a dancing monkey, you know. And I get it. Who wants to be a dancing monkey? But dancing monkey is only some stupid term that some idiot made up on the internet. It doesn't really bloody matter, you know. The reality of it is that guys who are dancing monkeys in nightclub environments are very successful. So the fact that some idiot made up this term dancing monkey and it kind of caught on the internet, who cares? Do you know what I mean? It doesn't matter. The reality of it is, if you go to Ibiza, if you go to Magaluf, if you go to like the trashy bars where you've got the guys out, everyone's out doing shots and partying and blah, blah, blah. The dudes who are like dancing monkeys are the guys who are being successful every night. It's the guys who are meeting these cute girls and having these great experiences with them and so on and so forth. The dudes who are being stoical and like, oh, I would never be a dancing monkey, and are standing back in the bar, those are the guys who are going home alone. Okay, so, being a dancing monkey, I mean, it depends what you want. Like, how badly do you want it? How badly do you want this outcome that you want to get? If you want it, who cares about if some idiot online thinks you're a dancing monkey? It's meaningless. It doesn't matter, okay? You've got to think about your end game, all right? Now, having said all of that, at the same time, I do agree that there's a limit to that. I mean, look, you don't want to be out there sort of kowtowing to her. You don't want to be out there supplicating yourself, okay? But if you think that going up and talking to people and saying some amusing things and having an ability to hold their attention and to do storytelling and to create good emotions in them, if you think that's being a dancing monkey, I would argue that that's a slightly negative way of looking at socializing, to be honest. Because actually doing all of that stuff can be fun and you can be bringing great emotions. And when you bring great emotions, you could tend to get a commensurate amount of great attention back from the people that you're interacting with. Okay. And that can be social attention. You're out at the party, you're having an amazing time, you're getting great, you're having that great bonding experience with the people around you. Okay. It's not even about sex or anything like that. It's like, that can be a great thing. So in a sense, I would say that the term dancing monkey itself is a somewhat misanthropic construct that's just been invented on the internet and doesn't really matter in real life. But there again, you don't want to be running around the bar like an idiot and having people noticing, but, live a little, have a bit of fun. Still dancing. What is hip hop? Hello, what is hip hop? Good to see you, man. It says it may be that if you're doing dancing monkey while being attention seeking is the problem compared to doing it without watching for anyone's reaction. Well, RSD always used to talk about what did they talk about? Self-amusement. Okay. And if you looked at the old RSD stuff, it's absolutely full, like self-amusement, bang, 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 bang. It's just the whole thing is self-amusement that they were talking about for years. And they were talking a lot about nighttime game, going out to nightclubs, going out to venues and stuff, and going out and having a great laugh, having a great time, okay? And fundamentally amusing yourself. So the term dancing monkey suggests that you are somebody who's doing stuff to impress somebody else. And I would agree that that is the wrong frame. Okay, because if you're doing things in order to get a reaction, yes, that is the wrong frame, because that is a subtle form of supplication. Okay, even if you're very good at it. But self-amusement is a different thing. Subtly different, but it is a different thing. Because if you're going out and you're talking to people and you're having a laugh, but you're doing it primarily because it entertains you or you find it funny, then you're not really being a dancing monkey. Now, of course, critics and naysayers will say you're being you're being a dancing monkey anyway. Even if you don't think you are actually being a dancing monkey. But again, I would say that is a somewhat negative construction. I would say that is that framing says more about them than it does about you, because that framing seeks to take the joy out of life and the joy out of having a good time and the joy out of having fun, I would say. So I think the problem is people come up with labels for things, and those labels end up dictating our lives. And those labels end up dictating how we behave. People will say things. They'll have little sayings, little memes, and those things will end up controlling your life. And that's not a good place to be. So somebody online a few years ago, it may actually even have been Roosh. It may have been Roosh, although he talked about Clown Game, didn't he? But somebody a few years ago came up with this term, dancing monkey, and it was a pejorative term to put down guys who, basically try and impress girls by talking a lot and doing some fancy stuff. And people thought it was funny and it caught on. But the problem is, but who cares, right? A bunch of people that you'll never meet on the internet came up with this term. But now you're allowing it to control your life. You're allowing it to control your behavior. Because when you're out in the club in, Vegas or whatever, and nobody from the internet is there, nobody knows who you are. None of these random faceless people on the internet who came up with this term or who passed this term around are even there or aware of your existence. And you're allowing it to control you because you're thinking, I don't want to be a dancing monkey like that guy on the internet said, because that would be bad. So I'm going to stand here and look cool, and I'm going to hold my drink close to my chest because there's no way I'm going to be a dancing monkey. And, you're allowing people that you've never even met, who you don't even know, to control your behavior. Okay. There's other examples of this as well. I mean, classic examples are the societal things. Classic examples is societal thinking. Like, if you don't own a house by the time you're 30, then you've failed. Well, have you? I mean, that's an idea that gets passed around in society in many countries. Not every country, not countries in Europe, it's a different thing. But in many countries, that's an idea that gets passed around. But what does it really mean? It's an idea. It's an idea that some people have had, that they've passed around and shared around with each other. I mean, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Who invented that? I think actually, I could be wrong about this, so fact check this. And if I'm wrong, then I apologize. But I think it was actually invented by a breakfast cereal company in order to promote their breakfast cereal. Breakfast is the most important meal of the day. And that sticks in our head. Some of these little constructions, these little memes, they stick in our minds and they control our behavior. So now, decades later, after whatever copywriter invented breakfast is the most important meal of the day, we all still believe it. And we all still behave accordingly. Because somebody once made up this thing, breakfast is the most important meal of the day. Well, is it? I don't know. I stopped eating breakfast a year or so ago, a year and a half ago, whatever. Because the issue that I have with breakfast, and by the way, this is not a medical advice channel. I'm not a dietitian. Please don't pay any attention to me at all on this. But the issue that I have with breakfast is that if I eat a good breakfast early in the morning, which is what everyone, people used to say that you were supposed to do, I'm hungry again an hour and a half later. So I just end up eating more, so I just end up intaking more calories on a daily basis than I otherwise would, because it seems to me, and again, I'm not an expert, I'm not a dietitian, but it seems to me that it kickstarts your metabolism and it seems to make you hungry. Whereas if I leave it until later to have that first meal in the day, I'm not as hungry, therefore I eat less calories, therefore, I'm able to stay more trim. But if you buy into the received thinking, breakfast is the most important meal of the day, don't be a dancing monkey, whatever, then you're buying into somebody else's ideas. You're submitting to somebody else's programming. And that's not necessarily in your best interest. Eating isn't cheating. Yeah, well, indeed. Amused mastery and self-amusement are two different things. There's a good article on Chateau Artiste about amused mastery. Yes, they are. They're two very different things. I don't know who was saying that they were. I mean, so amused mastery. We talked about this the other day. Amused mastery is when you are in an interaction and your frame within that interaction is that you are the one in control. And the other person in that interaction within your frame is kind of almost a cute, it's almost like the kind of interaction you might have with a young relative or something like that. It's like, oh, that's so sweet. That's so cute. That's so sweet. Yeah, whatever. It's like you are so inherently convinced of your own control within that particular situation. That is your frame, that you're affectionately amused by the other person. And even if she's a beautiful woman, even if she's a 9 or whatever, it's like, oh, God, oh, honey, that's so sweet. That's so cute. It's that kind of vibe that you're bringing. The other one, self-amusement, is what we've just described, which is doing something because it's fun. It's doing something because it amuses you. All right. So it's going and having a conversation with a group of people, not being bothered about really what they're going to think of you. You're doing it because you think it's a laugh. So you go up to them and you're like, listen, guys, I have to tell you, I'm a virgin. I just can't get laid. I've never, whatever. You go in and you say something that is almost a demonstration of lower value, but you do it because it amuses you to see what their reaction is, and you don't really care what their reaction is. Okay, that is self-amusement. They're two very different things. What is hip hop says home ownership isn't all it's cracked up to be. I'm glad I have my place. It's not purely upside. Absolutely, it isn't. And of course, there are different views. There are dissenting views now in terms of home ownership. But I'm just saying there are certain things in society. We could make a whole list of them if we spend enough time. There's a whole list of things that received ideas about what you should do and how you should act, and they're not always in your best interests, or they don't always work for everybody, but they sort of leech themselves, they log into your brain and they stick in your brain, and it can be very hard to dislodge them, but sometimes you need to dislodge them in order to move forward. And I think that the dancing monkey thing is one of those. What else do we have? Owning a house in London by the time you're 30, that's a challenge in London. Well, it's a challenge, but so are many things. It doesn't mean that it's not doable. Well, a house is, pushing it a bit maybe, but. Right, Johnny says, is your format for a day game set open vibe, investment, qualify, close? And what are your favorite vibing stories to get the hook? Yes, it is. And favorite vibing stories, well, it just depends on the situation. I talk about this in CAD Academy. That's not a plug so much, but I can't think off the top of my head. It's not something that I normally tell travel stories. I normally tell stories about things that happened to me when I've been in different countries, or maybe the country where she's from, etc., etc. It doesn't really matter that much because, and I go back to what I was talking about at the beginning of this show. The story itself, it doesn't have to be that good. It doesn't have to be. We're not talking about some kind of Hollywood style 3-act structure, screenwriting genius here. The story itself doesn't have to be that great. The purpose of the story is so that you can keep talking and keep standing in front of her and keep communicating the sub-communication to her through the eye contact, through the proximity, through the touch, etc., that there is something else going on here, that there is a sexual undercurrent to this, or a romantic, erotic undercurrent to the interaction. That's the purpose of the story. The story itself doesn't really matter that much. It could be going to the dry cleaners to pick up some clothes, and then you found £5 on the floor. I mean, it doesn't have to be great. It just has to be, and it's also how you tell them. It's how you tell them, as a comedian used to say. Again, it doesn't matter that much what the story is. It can be going to Tesco's and you found out they ran out of chicken or something. It doesn't matter that much. What's important is how you tell it and the way that you put it across, and that's around your tonality, the degree of emotion that you bring into what you're talking about, etc., etc. The color, the vividness with which you describe, with which you paint the picture. Okay. All of that stuff, very important. You could tell the most this is the thing, right? I have to say, you'll be stood in the club like going, oh my God, look at all those chads talking to those girls. What are they saying? What amazing verbal skills those guys must have to keep these girls wrapped with attention. And then you go and listen to what they're saying, and it's all nonsense. It's all rubbish. It's all like, yeah, well, you know, like, yeah, you know, like we took the motor down to Southend at the weekend, and yeah, there weren't no parking spaces. All right, so you fancy a drink, love? You know, there's nothing amazing going on. It's not like this kind of like high level Shakespearean dialogue, but it doesn't matter because it's not like the quality of the story or the quality of the narrative that's important. It's what is being subcommunicated. Okay, so I would practice talking about random subjects. You can do exercises to do this. Practice talking so that you're able to talk for periods of time. And underneath that, you want to be thinking about the subcommunication. You want to be thinking about what's really going on here. What's going on here, like the guy says in this post, is that he's communicating to her that he desires her, okay? And she's getting that communication. That's the important thing, the subcommunication. Frank Carson. It's how you tell them. Absolutely. I'm not purple pilled or black pilled, but why does dating in 2021 feel so much harder than a uni masters? Well, partly because we're not allowed out of the house. I mean, being allowed to go out would probably make it a little bit easier. Well, I mean, you know, it's the topic for another show, really. But we've talked about the global dating marketplace and all of those things. So I think it's that really. Obviously, the current situation hasn't helped in terms of the restrictions and things like that. David says, hi from Ibiza. I'm a massive fan of Ibiza, big fan of your stuff. Thank you, sir. Good to hear. Whereabouts in Ibiza are you, and what is the situation? I've got a friend in Ibiza at the moment, actually, and I believe that it's very restricted over there still. I hope that this year they're able to open up again. I mean, goodness knows, really by summer, maybe late summer. I don't know, but I mean, last year was terrible for Ibiza. I was considering going over there, but it just, to be honest, it just didn't really seem kind of worth it, really. I think I would have almost been a bit sad to go to Ibiza last year, and just because what it's meant to be like and what it actually turned out to be like. So I hope and pray for the Ibiza and the people of Ibiza that things improve this year. Let's see where we get to. But I'd be interested to know what things are like on the ground at the moment. Women have too much power these days. The power of game is reduced. They select. Well, yeah, but even if it's reduced, even if it is reduced, what are you going to do? Even Patty wouldn't try that. I think he. Have you got any infills pre-COVID you can upload to the channel? Well, there's a bunch of infills. Whether I upload them to the channel is another thing. I've explained this before. I took them down. I think last year I took most of them down for various reasons, not least because of YouTube cracking down on that stuff. You can get them though. I can post a link to. There's a product called Renegade Dating Infield, which has got a bunch of my infills in it. You can watch them there. Also, if you come into CAD Academy or indeed actually come to my Patreon, I share them there as well. So there are options to see them. But as and when uploading them to this channel, watch this space for the time being. Adam says, the guy in the article sounds like he doesn't want to do the work. I would agree with that, really. I think it's like on one level, I agree with what he's saying. But on another level, it's a little bit like he's kind of sort of saying, I'm not much good at this talking stuff. So I've decided to just forget that. And I'm just going to stand there and do nothing. And that works for me, mate. And while I'm not disputing that it doesn't work for him in certain situations, I would suggest that he's probably leaving opportunities on the table because he's not allowing himself to be proactive enough. Jaren says he sounds like a Sigma, perhaps. Adam, I haven't been with a new young lady since October. It's almost impossible with all these restrictions. It's certainly not ideal. Let's be in no doubt about that. And what else do we have here? Ibiza is so restrictive you can only sleep with no more than 2 people at the same moment. Yes, I have no idea. No, it was a bad situation. It was a bad situation last year, unfortunately. But let's see where we get to this year. Johnny says, what age of girls have you noticed you've had more success with? Or what are your impressions when you tell them you're 40? Or do you not answer the age question? Well, I mean, mate, to be honest, I pretty much only dated girls in their 20s, really, all my life, to be honest. I mean, well, okay, 20s and early 30s, let's say, but predominantly 20s. And that hasn't changed throughout my life. Now, when I become 50, when I become 65, when I'm 67, is that going to still be the case? Maybe not. You know, like I'm not saying this goes on forever, but you know, the way it's worked for me is I've ended up dating girls who are in their 20s predominantly, and you know, there haven't been any issues. That's just been how it's been, and that's been cool. You know, like it's a big subject. I don't believe that people will say, well, what do you have in common with these people and things like this? I don't see it like that myself. I think you can have things in common with age is not really a factor in terms of having things in common with somebody. So yeah, you know, that's been my experience. It may be different for other people, but I don't think age is such a big deal. I don't always get into the age question that early on, but you know, it depends. Every woman is different in terms of what she is looking for, and so on and so forth. Nash says, hey Troy, big fan, proud owner of Renegade Dating. I think he means Renegade Dating Blueprint, probably, which is my collection of 11 books. Link below. So do grab that. If you guys haven't got Renegade Dating Infield, do grab that. It's only $39. It's got 11 of my books in it, which are, and somebody asked about Amazon before, and I'm actually republishing the books on Amazon again now. I took them off stupidly for some reason before Christmas. I'm republishing most of them on Amazon, but if you want to get them less expensively and in one bundle, then go to the link below, click for Renegade Dating Infield, and you can get 11 of the books for just $39, which is really cheap. And it's got a whole ton of stuff in there, really, you know, loads and loads of stuff in there. So I would recommend that you do that if you like my approach and my insights and so on and so forth. He says, any tips on breaking up with plates, but in a considerate manner? Well, if they're plates, then how considerate do you need to be? I mean, I'm not being harsh, but if it's not that serious, then fading out, the slow fade, is pretty good. I mean, both parties know what's up. It's not a big surprise to any girl. Girls do the same thing. I don't think personally you need to go into some big emotional kind of conversation if it's not that serious. But if it's somebody that you've been seeing for a bit longer, then, you know, the only thing you can do really is have the talk. You have to sit down and say, listen, you know, I love hanging out with you. This has been awesome, but you have to understand where I'm coming from. This is the position that I'm in at the moment, and just be open and transparent. That's all you can do, and then cut off the communication. But I would say that the slow fade is probably just as effective. Zom says, should I approach girls even though I'm still very out of shape, or should I get my shape first, up my confidence, and then start practicing game? No, you should start now anyway. Yes, you want to make a priority to get into shape, but no, you should start approaching now because, you know, like you need to get the practice, and, you know, you don't know. No man knows the physical type that a woman prefers until he goes in and approaches. Just because you're not in shape, that doesn't mean that you're going to get no traction. And it's just, you know, the more that you put yourself out there, the more likely you are to be getting those results. So no, you should definitely approach now, as Johnny says. Nibble says, is there any recommended order to read your books? Well, it entirely up to you, but 7 Laws of Seduction is a good one to start on, which was my very basic sort of game primer, if you like. Then you might read Approach Her Like Chad, which is a more recent book, but it's all about the art of the approach. How do I approach and not feel nervous doing it and not feel approach anxiety and so on? So approach her like Chad. You might want to read Text Game Mastery just because it's all about texting and sending messages on, by whatever app you're on, WhatsApp, or even like going to Tinder and things like that as well as Instagram and so on. So, seeing as messaging is such a big part of dating, you might want to look at that. Then I would say How to Be an Arsehole, which talks about dark triad and how to get that bad boy thing that girls always love. And what about after that? Still in the Game is a book if you're a little bit more mature and you want somebody who's asking about dating younger girls. If you're a little bit more mature, you might want to read Still in the Game because that explains how it is as you get into your later 30s and into your 40s. And then beyond that, really, I mean, the 50 Shades of Game books, really 50 Shades of Game is a trilogy. It's kind of one book, really, but it's separated into 3 parts. And that's a little bit more specialist. It goes into fetish parties. It talks a bit about swingers parties. And then it talks about strip clubs as well, actually. So there's that. And and then I've also got that collection called Renegade Dating Domination, which is a collection of 2 volumes of all of my articles from Return of Kings and stuff that I've published on my website over the years. That covers loads and loads of different subject areas, topics as well. So if you go to my Gumroad page, then have a look at that also. That's a really useful one to read. JC says, good work, Troy. Thank you, man. Very appreciated. Afro says, I'm more of a paperback guy. Will buy it on Amazon. Yeah, most of them are available in paperback on Amazon. I'm republishing them at the moment, so they should be back up in the next day or so. Check it out. Farhan, well, welcome to the stream. Good to see you, man. Says, why do women give IOIs but still reject you at the end? Well, Johnny's answer is it could be many things from your side and her side. Your day game might not be good enough, or she just finds you attractive, loved up, or a cat died. Exactly. I mean, the thing is, right, IOIs, indicators of interest. That is to say, she looks at you, she gives you a bit of eye contact, maybe she smiles, maybe she winks. That's probably unlikely, but whatever. She gives you some indicator that she might be interested. You should follow those up. Okay, you should follow those up because if she's, like a warm approach is better than a cold approach. And if she's given you some indication that she might be interested, then of course it's worth following that up. But don't fall into the misapprehension that it's going to be definitely going to be a positive response when you do, because sometimes, like Johnny said, she might give an indicator of interest, but that doesn't mean she necessarily wants to take things further. She might have a boyfriend, she might be married, she might be engaged, she might just not be in that headspace, or like people will smile at each other. So even in this day and age, even in this dystopian nightmare that we're all living through, people will smile at each other sometimes, public transport, in shops, things like that. She might think you're kind of cute. It doesn't necessarily mean that she wants to drop everything and get jiggy with it. But nevertheless, it's worth approaching in those circumstances because at the same time, the flip side to that is that she has expressed some interest, and that's a good thing. So I would approach. I would go and give it a shot, but don't think automatically she gave you an indicator of interest and it's going to lead to something, because it may not. But it could be other things as well. It could be maybe your day game wasn't that tight or whatever. And, in order to fix that, you need to get a private consultation with me. And there's a link below for that as well. But no, seriously, I mean, like it would be hard to diagnose exactly without spending a bit more time with you or with whoever is asking that similar question. But yeah, give it a shot, but just don't expect miracles just because they've given an IOI. JC says, how to deal with the lack of patience to pursue. Got a few chats on Tinder, but all the chicks want guys to pursue, and the thirst of other guys makes Makes it easy, I guess, easy for them. I mean, look, no easy answers to that, really. Wait a minute, what's to say here? Easy to the chicks to discard the guy. Sorry, he continues to discard the guy that doesn't give validation. Even ugly chicks think they're to be pursued as the prize. Well, I mean, you can pursue a bit. It doesn't. Well, I suppose you're giving validation in the sense that you're pursuing. I mean, I think that you've got to cut to the chase quite quickly. You might go backwards and forwards a few times, and then you're like, listen. It's been all, we should definitely exchange numbers. I'm not on this app very much. We should exchange numbers, try to get her onto WhatsApp. And then once you're on WhatsApp, backwards and forwards, a little joke, whatever. And then like, listen, we should definitely meet for drinks. You seem like a cool girl. I know this great cocktail bar. How about Wednesday at 8? And then if she prevaricates on that, you might give her another chance. But in the end, you've got to think, right, okay, well, knock that one on the head. On to the next one. Okay, you've got to be reasonably industrial about this, in the sense that you're just working through a process, and you're working through the same process with all of them. And I mean, like, in terms of how do you deal with the lack of patience? Well, it depends. How badly do you want it? I mean, do you want results or not? If you want results, the ultimate motivation is thinking this girl is really attractive, and if this comes off, then I could end up, having a great time meeting up with her and dating and whatever, right? So that is your motivation. If that isn't strong enough, then you might want to consider why that is. You might want to look at no fat for a bit or cutting down. You might want to, are you doing enough weight training? Are you upping your T levels enough? Do you know what I mean? Because that should be your motivation. I mean, yes, I get it's annoying. I get all of that, but also put the negativity out of your head. Don't be thinking all this stuff like, oh, girls, they all just want attention, and it's so annoying, like women these days and all that. Just shut that negativity out. That's all BS. That's all internet BS. Because whether that's so what, right? I mean, yeah, maybe that's true, maybe it isn't, but it doesn't matter. Just put that out of your head and just play the game. Get into playing the game. Throw the dice on the table, right? If that one doesn't work out, on to the next one. Keep spinning the wheel, and your motivation is the potential, positive outcome that you can get at the end of it, which is a date and intimacy and all the rest of it, right? That's your motivation. You either want to meet cute girls or you don't. And if you do, you've got to be in it to win it. I mean, I strung together about 5 cliches there, but you know what I'm saying. That should be your motivation. Your motivation should be inherent in you anyway. And if it isn't, maybe you need to go and do some squats or something, build up that testosterone. Chad versus Cad, who would win? Well, I don't know. They're kind of synonymous, really, aren't they? I mean, if the Cad is a Chad, then I guess that would be a slam dunk. I mean, ultimately, maybe the Chad would win. If the Cad is less good looking than the Chad, but he's got that caddishness to him, maybe the Chad would win. But so what, right? I mean, you've got to, again, keep spinning the wheel, go on to the next one. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter. Like people will try to bring up these false dichotomies and say things like, well, if there was a guy who was really great at game, but then this 7-foot Adonis with amazing cheekbones walks in and they both approach the same girl, who's going to win? Well, maybe the guy who looks like a 7-foot Adonis is going to win. I mean, yeah, but really, for a start, how likely is that situation? And secondly, so what anyway? Because then the Cad just dusts himself off and goes, okay, well, he won that time, and then he goes on to the next one. It doesn't undermine the value of understanding the mindset techniques of caddishness, of those charisma and dating tools. Okay, it doesn't undermine that. Sometimes you get outclassed. Other times you don't. You still need to have the right mindsets and the right toolkit at your disposal so that you're more likely to win out in a situation where maybe there's less direct competition. %. I absolutely do. All right, guys. Anyway, listen, my voice is going now, and I've got to get going in a bit anyway. So let's bring this one to a close. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. Hope you got some huge value out of this. It's been an enjoyable show. I've loved being on here. Thank you to everyone for joining. Notices from me, hit subscribe. I want to get up to 10,000 subscribers soon. We're sort of teetering around there at the moment. So just keep hitting that subscribe button. If you're not subscribed to me already, please do subscribe. It really helps me in terms of the algorithm and stuff. Give me a like, give me a comment below, anything like that. Hit the notifications bell as well so you can see when new videos are coming up, new content's coming up. Beyond that, there's a bunch of things in the description below. But if you want to get a consultation session with me, my calendar's now open. So hit that. Renegade Dating Blueprint, which is my collection of 11 books. As I said, $39. There's a link to that below also. And yeah, I hope that you guys have a great rest of the day. Thank you to Backland Bob. Thank you to Nash. Thank you to Edward, Farhan, JC, Delfinity, everybody really for showing up on the live stream. Adam, etc., Johnny Lyon, the dude in Ibiza. Thanks, everybody. And Backland Bob says, no homosexual. How does Troy keep his hair on point in the pandemic? Well, I owe a lot to this product, which I'm not being sponsored for, but Fudge Matte Head. You can see that there. It's normally got an orange. Top. This stuff is really good. I really like it. I recommend it. So yeah, that helps a lot. But yeah, aside from that, lots of grooming. Somebody told me. Oh, I can't find it. Don't worry, I can't find it. But I've got a good hairbrush as well because somebody told me. Yeah, here we go. Somebody told me to get this hairbrush, which is called Denman. And then it's not actually very expensive, but I got the hairbrush, and that's really good as well. So a good hairbrush, a bit of fudge, you're in a good position. So that's it. I will see you guys again very soon.